What's going on, fight fans? It's Capital Combat. The name says it all. I'm Rob Jarrell, and this is a recap for a heavyweight weekend that we just experienced. Of course, there were some other fights. Jamal James got a win. Shakur Stevenson got his win. Joshua Gura Jr. got his win. If I'm not mistaken, Ray Vargas got a win as well. But I'm gonna try to cover those on another video. But let's get down to business. The heavyweight division had 4 separate fights on, I believe, 3 separate channels, and or 3 separate telecasts, and it featured 3 up-and-coming, soon-to-be contenders for a title, and 1 guy who's still trying to get back into the win column after a few losses that was a little devastating to his career. So I'm actually going to start that one. We had, and this is the land of the Giants because all but 1 guy is over 6'4". So starting with Gerald Washington out of California versus Robert Linnaeus out of Finland, the Nordic Nightmare. And what was 2 guys that really needed a win. Gerald Washington was 19-3-1 coming into this. Robert Linnaeus was 28-2. He had the greater pedigree. In Robert Linnaeus, he faced a stiffer competition, and he was slightly bigger and fought bigger in this fight than I thought that Gerald Washington did. And we know Gerald Washington had those losses to Andy Ruiz, Jarrell Miller, and Deontay Wilder, which fighting those 3 guys, you had 2 former champions, 1 guy who should have been competing for a belt, but because of his own stupidity, greediness, whatever, he didn't because he got popped with PEDs. But that's neither here nor there. Gerald Washington is slightly older, and this fight was a little bit harder to call because Gerald Washington, he has the look of a fighter, being a former football player. He has that the look, muscular as, but he still fights way too stiff. He fights with his chin up. Linnaeus fought with his chin up, but he was much more fluid in his punching. But he never really brought his hands back to protect himself properly. Gerald Washington really doesn't have that those little things with boxing that someone will want. He doesn't really snap his jab. He pushes it out there. He does a great job when he uses it to blind his opponent when he doesn't have to get full extension. But if you ask him to get that full extension, he never gets, and he pushes out there instead of getting that snap. He throws a decent left hook, but it's one of those left hook that you just kind of put out there and hopefully it lands and keeps the guy off you. And then he fights again with his chin up. And when he throws his jab, it's almost like he's throwing a jab and leaning back at the same time. And I guess he would because the 3 losses that he had were by knockout. Deontay Wilder, it was a TKO loss, and then he just got straight knocked out by Ruiz and Miller. So he was able to land that right hand. That's pretty much his best punch. That's a lot of guys' best punch. But it's his best punch when he can throw it in a 1-2. If he's just throwing it and getting that snap on it, then it's going to land. And Robert Linnaeus being having a greater amateur career and more fights, should have known that, but he really just doesn't take care of himself defensively. He was much more fluid, but the footwork wasn't there either. I think he got caught off guard and out of position quite a few times, especially against a guy like Washington who doesn't really stay on his toes. He's very stiff. He can only really move back and forth, and he really doesn't duck punches. He does block very well, has those hands up, but Robert Linnaeus is really, while he was putting some rounds in the bank, he really wasn't taking control of the fight. And Washington, who's pretty adverse to contact, should have been much easier to hit, but he's much more responsible. But I think he's still just a little skittish in there. But Gerald Washington really hurt him with that right hand in the 8th round. And after that, it really wasn't much that Linnaeus could do. So congrats to Gerald Washington, but I just really don't know who you put him in there with. You can't put him in there with a B-plus fighter because, in my opinion, he's just going to get beat. But you don't want to keep putting him in the ring with guys that really just aren't going to present a challenge or to him. So, but he got the win. Nothing here that's neither here nor there. You know, a W is a W. So moving on, we had the 21-year-old Daniel Dubois taking on the undefeated 23-year-old Nathan Gorman, both out of the UK. Both show a lot of respect for each other after the fight. But Daniel Dubois, this was his fight to lose. Nathan Gorman had that sexy record, but at being at 16-0, and he's a willing participant. He's a willing fighter. He really fought back against Dubois, but Dubois, when he can utilize that jab, and this is being that these guys are all 6'5", 6'4", 6'6", 6'7", you want to. That's the one thing you want to be able to see from a guy that tall is how can he use his jab, especially with these guys' long reach. And he used it very well. He used it quite a bit versus Gorman. And Gorman would punch with him, but he really didn't have the tightness in his technique to really make Daniel Dubois pay enough. At times he would get him along the ropes. He would just let his hands go, which proved very well for him. But Daniel Dubois not only jabs very well, but he hits really hard. He knocked him down, I believe, early in the fight, about the second round. And that was a hard punch. And I was surprised that Gorman actually got up. And not only did he get up, but he was able to tie and fight back. He was like, screw it. You're going to have to earn this knockout. And it ain't going to be for me running. And Dubois does get hit just a tad bit too much in between his punches. And that's okay for a guy like Gorman. Dubois isn't the most swift of feet, but he has a pretty decent chin. And with a guy like Gorman, who's going to come forward, he's not really going to give up too much space. He's going to tie you up, and he's going to throw some punches that you're not going to see. Daniel Dubois shows some good defensive instincts and utilizing that jab and sticking with the jab. The jab was working even when Gorman was getting a little bit wild. They're trying to throw some unorthodox punches. Daniel Dubois stuck with it, and not only did he stick with it, but he used it in a variety of ways to keep Gorman off him, to set up his right hand and the uppercut, and to do damage on his own, because once he got it out there, snapped it out there with his long reach, he was able to get to Gorman, and it at times hurt him quite a bit. So that ended in the fifth round. That was, I'm going to be honest, a fairly exciting fight because Gorman did come to fight, even though if it was a little sloppy. I'm looking at Daniel Dubois to get a title shot in about 4 fights, get him to 15-0, because a lot of these guys, they're moving extremely quickly. On the next fight, we had the former gold medalist in 2016, 5-0 Tony Yoka out of France, taking on Alexander Dimitrenko, someone out of a fighter out of Germany that has seen any and everybody over his 46 fight career. And this would have been the biggest test for Tony Yoka, but not only would it have been a great test for him, but being at 5-0, they're moving him extremely quickly. And I see why. He's coached by Virgil Hunter, which he has a great teacher in his corner, someone that's able to get to his fighter and get to his fighters and really have that pedigree with people in the camp. And he looked really good. He was, I think, with Tony Yoka, knowing that he has that much longer reach, knowing that he can match Alexander Dimitrenko at 6'7", he's patient. He doesn't waste a lot of movement. He doesn't waste a lot of punches. He really is patient, sets you up, and kind of worked off that jab. He kind of buried up his right hand. He would give a different look with the overhand and the uppercut. And his ability to measure distance and get right into his sweet spot was very good. He was able to land that 1-2 on Dimitrenko, and it really hurt him. And it really didn't take much after that to knock him out. I think it was 2 more right hands, and Tony Yoka really just saw it coming. So he just, after he knocked him down the first time, he was like, let me throw another one. Screw it. I'm not even going to throw another jab. I'm going to just put that left hand up so you can't see it and throw it over the top. I was impressed with him. He may get a title shot after improving to 6-0, maybe around his 10th fight. Again, they're moving these guys pretty fast, especially the gold medal winners and the other Olympic champions or Olympic level fighters. And what I think the best fight of the night came with Joe Joyce out of the UK, the silver medalist after losing to Tony Yoka in the 2016 Olympics, versus Bryant Baba Jennings out of Philly. And again, Jennings is someone I really hate to see him turn into not a journeyman, but a gatekeeper, because I think even though he was a football player and he started late, he has not only the conditioning, but he's a hard worker, and he listens to his coach, John David Jackson, quite well. And taking a guy like Joe Joyce, who not only is taller than him, but remember, he fought Vladimir Klitschko and took him the distance. Joe Joyce, he did the same. And we know that Brian Jennings saw who's who: Luis Ortiz, Klitschko, somebody else. He had another loss, and it's escaping me. So we got a great fight. Joe Joyce played around a lot in the first round. You know, those UK guys, they like to showboat and get a show going. And Brian Jennings was like, yeah, I'm not playing. I'm coming to fight. And coming to fight today, he really, when he was able to get inside Joe Joyce's longer reach and let his hands go, that's when he made him pay. And not with the jab again. Someone like, similar to Gerald Washington, he just kind of puts the jab or pushes the jab out there to kind of stop momentum or at least judge distance, but he doesn't really have too much snap on it. But once he gets inside, he get with that high guard, he can get inside, throw hooks and an overhand right, which was there all night, but he just didn't throw enough to score properly against Joe Joyce. And trust me, Joe Joyce, for a guy his size, being roughly 6'6" and maybe 240, 250 pounds, he throws a lot of punches. He gets that jab out there. They're fluid. And being coached by Adam Booth, his footwork is looking much, much better because he was always out of position. He was getting tired in a lot of fights, and he was getting hit a little too much. He's still getting hit a little too much in between his punches, and he can be countered once a guy gets inside mid-range to close range. They really just have to throw it over the top of his jab or even over the top of his right hand, which, again, Jennings did, but just not enough. And Joe Joyce, using that size, he was able to punch Jennings against the ropes. And Brian Jennings with that high guard was just letting him punch, and he really couldn't get off like he wanted to. For Brian Jennings, what he should have done is push the pace, make it a little bit more physical, even though he would have been a smaller man. He's a guy, and I've watched him on Instagram. And Joe Joyce, I mean, all these guys are in shape, but Brian Jennings is really in shape. He works hard. I've seen him just wring out his shirt multiple times, and he's still going. He really just didn't have the fluidity and the punch output to beat Joyce. Joyce really let that the left hand go out there, and I don't think he landed anything significantly harder than what Brian's landed on him. It's just that his work rate, his ability to manage the ring, and when Jennings did get him against the ropes, he used his footwork to not be there very often. He was able to step to his side, usually step to his left laterally and fire back. And then he had a really good chin. He took some really good shots from Brian Jennings throughout the fight. Again, if Jennings was able to land more than maybe one or two punches at a time, more often through the fight, then yeah, he would have made it much more interesting. Not only that, but he did lose a point for a low blow. I think about midway through a fight in a round that he was winning. I want to say it was either the 8th or 9th round. I could be wrong. Feel free to correct me. I watched the fights back on Saturday and Sunday, so my memory is a little bit hazy. But again, it was a great fight. It was Joe Joyce's best competition to date. I think he got a lot out of the fight. You could see him tire around the 10th round. Like, he wasn't really sitting on his punches as much. He was coming up off his feet and really had to lean on Brian Jennings to keep him from punching instead of moving around and using the ring better, and that's why I think Brian Jennings really took advantage of the fight. So yeah. Oh, not only that, but this is the first fight in which Joyce was unable to not only knock out his opponent, but even going 12 rounds. So we got three guys that we just saw over the course of the weekend that seems like they're poised to get a title fight sooner than later, probably in 2020, within about a year or so, depending on who's doing what, when, who drops a belt, who picks up a belt, because we know right now there's only two champions, Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz Jr., and we have the lineal heavyweight titleist, or the uncrowned king in Tyson Fury. And I don't know if any of you all noticed, and this is a rather long video, and I'm sorry that it's so long, but the heavyweight division is getting really exciting. Like I said, you have the champions, these prospects, the champions, Andy Ruiz, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. We have guys like Dillian White that's always fighting Huey Fury. Anthony Joshua is going to rematch Andy Ruiz Jr., Alexander Povetkin, Luis Ortiz, Dominic Brazil. Then we have the other up-and-coming guys who are undefeated, such as Adam Kalnowski, Alexander Usyk moving up from cruiserweight, Zhang Zhilei, Oscar Rivas, who has a fight versus Dillian White, I want to say in about a week's time or 2 weeks' time. Gerald Miller, whenever he comes back from suspension, Junior Fa, and Filip Hrgovic, who actually was the bronze medalist in the 2016 Olympics. So, and F.A. Jagba, that Nigerian nightmare who made a guy just walk out the ring. So, the heavyweight division is just exciting, and we really need to pay attention, because these aren't the Khabib Pulevs or the Amir Mansours and all of these names that kind of recycle constantly. These are a bunch of fresh names and guys who are in 1 or 2 losses that are always going to be in the mix, and it's got to work itself out. So that's all I got for you today. I'm sorry it's about a 17 or 18 minute video, but I hope you stuck with us through the whole thing. And if you haven't, please like this video. If you haven't, please subscribe. Feel free to leave any comments in the comment section, just for you respectful of us and to each other. And until next time, fight on.
This is round 1 and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is coming.